who has been so great to work with to get us this film and to make both Alex and Daniel available to participate with us. So we're super thankful to Josh and Passion River. I also want to thank our community partners, SURJ, showing up for racial justice, and Drawdown Marin. We've done a couple of really great programs with them in the past, and we're just so thrilled that we were able to bring this one online. We were going to do this program in partnership with them, I think, in May. I've lost track of calendars, but there was a live event that was going to happen that we had to obviously cancel. So we're so thrilled that we were able to bring it back online now, and thank you to for their support in helping make that possible too, and for sharing it with their communities. And of course, I would love to welcome our three special guests. We have Alexander John Glustom, the director of Mossville, Daniel Bennett, the producer, and our local guest, Royce McElmore. Just a little quick bio on each of them, just to give you a sense of who's who. So when asking questions or thinking about who you want to ask a question of, you'll have a little sense of their background and where they're coming from. As I said, Alex is the director of Mossville. He has directed, shot, produced, and edited a wide variety of film projects, ranging from commercial, music, and art videos to of course, documentaries. His first documentary, Big Charity, won the Jury Award and Audience Award at the New Orleans Film Festival. Alex himself was named Filmmaker of the Year at the 2015 New Orleans Millennial Awards. And in addition to filmmaking, Alex served as the director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Iberville Public Housing Development. He co-founded and runs a photo workshop at the Youth Empowerment Project, and he regularly leads art and film classes for New Orleans youth. So a lot of great background there. Daniel Bennett, producer, grew up in Mossville, Louisiana, the son of Delma and Christine Bennett, longtime Mossville residents and environmental activists. Daniel brings a crucial perspective to the project, helping to ensure that the story is being told accurately and in the spirit of the place and people who live there. He was not only instrumental in the editorial and creative process, but often played an important role in the production as a field producer. He also works professionally as a photographer, videographer, and storyteller. Royce McElmore is president of the Golden Gate Village Residents Council, on the board of the Marin City Community Services District, and is a former member of the Marin Housing Authority Board. In 1990, she co-founded Women Helping All People, a family and educational resource center in Marin City, which also includes a private school. She's leading the charge to hold off the gentrification of Golden Gate Village by private investors whose plan would lead to the displacement of the last historic African-American community in Marin County. So welcome to Alex, Daniel, and Royce. Thank you all so much for being here. So I'd like to start off maybe with just a quick question, both for Alex and Daniel. Just Alex, how did you first learn about the situation in Mossville, and how did you and Daniel come to work together on this project?
Well, I was approached by an environmental rights lawyer named Monique Hardin. Monique is a kind of a hero in the environmental justice and civil rights community in Louisiana. She's a lawyer and an activist, and her and I sat on a panel discussion for my first film, Big Charity. And after the panel discussion, she came up to me and said, "I want to take you to Mossville. I think this could be your next film." And looking up to Monique so much and trusting her, I followed her out there. And some of the very first people that I met when I got to Mossville were Daniel's parents. And they toured me around the town. And soon after I met Daniel, and we began working together.
And Daniel, what was when you first met Alex, were you open to the idea of him making a film about the community? Is that something that, seemed like a valuable pursuit?
It's familiar to have filmmakers and people who want to tell Mossville's story. It wasn't an unfamiliar thing. I did avoid Alex for quite some time. I was kind of being pushed towards him by my parents, and I just kind of wanted to stay out of his way. As a person of the arts, I just kind of didn't want to interfere with what he was doing, and I thought it was rather awkward to just kind of approach him. So I avoided Alex for some time. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that set Alex apart from everybody else was how genuine of a person he was. His approach was a little different. It wasn't an approach of to pull a story. He just seemed like he just wanted to get to know a lot of people, so that's kind of how I gravitated towards him over time.
And can you talk a little bit sort of about that process, Alex, of how you knew, like, what your approach was so that you could gain the, the trust and the knowing that this was a story that needed to be told in a certain way? What was your approach that you knew you needed to do in order to get the community to participate?
Well, I mean, I think, first and foremost, just, being a nice human being is like the first rule. I think going into a place where you don't know anything, it's really important to acknowledge that you don't know anything and to leave any preconceived notions that you have at the door. And I didn't go in there thinking that I knew the story that I wanted to tell. I went in there with open ears and listened to people, what story they wanted to be told. And I didn't want to put my own perspective imprinted on it. I more wanted to see myself as a reflection of what people were telling me. I wanted to amplify people's voices rather than try to insert my own perspective. But also we filmed with characters who really wanted us to be there. They really wanted to have their story told. So nobody that we shot with, there was no process of trying to convince them to participate. Both Stacy, our main character, and the supporting cast of the Fishers, they really felt it was important to have the world know what happened there. And so they wanted us to be there. And that's a really important thing, I think, for documentary filmmakers, to feel like you're invited and to feel like people want you to be there and want to participate in your project.
Daniel, is there a reason that your parents and you chose not to be on screen and have your story told in the same way?
I think it wasn't really, well, me, I'm an art person. I'm a creative, so I don't really like being on the other side of the camera. My parents, I really think it was just a time constraint. Just, you know, them actually having so many things going on. They have a lot of irons in the fire. My dad and my mom, I think both actually, we had footage of them. So, and I think it became an editorial thing as to why they weren't actually included.
Looks like you froze a tiny bit.
Yeah, I can pick up where he left off maybe. Yeah, we shot with both Daniel's parents, numerous scenes, especially Daniel's father. He was one of the characters that kind of got cut right at the very end. There were so many amazing people that we filmed with in Mossville. It was an incredibly challenging process to narrow down our final characters. I mean, there was Daniel's father as well as two other people who come to mind who I think just, you could have made a whole film about them and they could have been the star of the film. But because we wanted to make an immersive piece that brings you into our character story, we didn't want to jump around too much. We didn't want to have too many faces. So we really had to narrow it down. And that's why, we were sad to lose Mr. Delma, because he's an incredible character and an amazing voice, Daniel's father. But at the end of the day, we really just had to pick a couple people to be the main characters.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get Daniel back. I'm sure that we'll bring him back in as soon as we can get his connection up. But in the meantime, I'd love to bring Royce obviously into the conversation. You know, Louisiana is obviously a long way from California, but the issue of fence-line communities and these types of situations of environmental racism is pretty rampant throughout the country. Royce, can you speak to how you're seeing that play out here in and around, or in Marin City and in Marin County?
Yes, but coming from a different perspective, but still the end result is the same. When I saw the film, it was really just heart-wrenching in terms of the conditions that people had to live in, or else how they were being, just so cruelly forced off of their land, their property. That just really touched me to the utmost, to the core. Yes, we're here, and the same principle, the bottom line is that here in Marin County, they want our land. They want it. They want to move by any means necessary, but in the way that it's not trying to destroy our health, although it would if you're forced off the land and with no place to go. But I mean, where you're ending up with, with cancer and all of the various diseases, and as a means to get what they want is just cold-blooded to the core. And we have our fight, but our fight is not as severe as the one that in Mossville. And I talked to Lisa. I said, when I come into my wealth, I will not forget that town. And I mean, in terms of really bringing some attention, they need that, whoever the lawyer is down there, they need to be an active, to really be the voice for the voiceless down there. and to be able to really sue and shut down those plants that are down there killing those people slowly. I just think, you know, that is just a shame. Racism is still racism, but there's the different subtleties of racism. You know, we have racism here, but again, like in terms of really being as a means to show to what extreme that the powers to be will go through to be able to do what they want to do. We haven't reached that level yet.
Would you say though that gentrification, the way that you're experiencing it in, or attempting to experience in Marin City, is a form of environmental racism?
It is, because when you step back and think about why Marin City was built in the first place, we were, you know, as Black people, we came here to work in the World War II, and then with no way to go, where to go after the war, because this county wanted to move, tell everybody, close up, go back where you came from. Well, people said no, because of the conditions were better than where, you know, than what they left. And it's part of the Great Migration to the West Coast, to the Bay Area. So, and the people, the elders of the community at that time said, no, they weren't going to go back. So that made the county have to come up with something. And so they did. That's when the whole redevelopment began for Marin City back in the 1949, 1950s, where they had to create a place for Black people to be. And the reason why they picked the number that they had picked in the first place is because Black people were the workforce of this county. They were the ones that, you know, did the working on the laboring work and as well as, you know, day work and being the nannies and the what have you. And so that was really the life of most of the people that lived in Marin City, did that type of work through the 50s and the 60s. And then beginning in the 70s is when the shift began to happen. And so with that happening in the next generation of people not wanting to, didn't believe in the struggle that their forefathers believed in, and this being a community where you could be lulled into a deep sleep, and that's what happened. But in the meantime, it allowed the powers to be to begin to plot and plan on how to move Black people out of Marin County. No, you can't go there was redlining, still redlining in this county, where Black people cannot buy and homes, etc., or cannot really be. But there's still now a new form of redlining, and that is that now this county has redlined Marin City as the only place where poor people can be. And what I mean by that is how the gentrification went from a population of where at one point in the 50s was about 95%, 96% Black, now down to 20-some% Black. They've broken all kinds of laws as it relates to within public housing in terms of the waiting list. They'll bring in people who know that they have not been on the list. They have the homeowners that, you know, the Black elders who have worked hard and bought homes, and then when they died, their greedy children wanted to make that fast money and sold at outrageous prices, and the only people that could afford them, white people. So that's how, you know, it was a twofold street. It wasn't just somebody just coming in and I'm gonna take your land, and which is one of the elders had always said, with Marin City being the type of community that it was like a Black Mecca for opportunity within, and where you had bustling Black businesses, the whole town. to now where, you know, you are. But like he said, you're, for the power structure to be able to get in, you have to have your lackeys. You have to have your people from within that are willing to sell out their souls to make things happen. And I don't know about Mossville. I just don't understand it really in terms of, you know, why wasn't it stopped? There was a lot of questions that I had just in terms of, you know, I understand those that would want to stay there, but why was it allowed to happen? I know it didn't, you know, from the onset. That's what my question, maybe to Daniel, being that you lived there, that, you know, there, how was it allowed to even get to where people's health was being jeopardized? Who got paid?
I think well, excuse me, guys, my computer actually gave out on me on the last question.
Welcome back.
Thanks. But yeah, to answer that question, I mean, it comes down to dollars and cents. You know, that's what I always say. You know, the right pockets have to be greased. And, you know, like you may have seen in the film, Bobby Jindal mentions how many millions and billions of dollars are actually going to be funneled through the state. You know, and when you're talking billions of dollars compared to a few black people, oftentimes that's like a no-brainer, you know?
Yeah.
And so it came down to, you know, the disposable less, you know, and they've always fought. We've always fought. It's always been, hey, this isn't fair. This isn't right, you know, and they pitch the benefits. They have the money to spend the benefits as, hey, you know, this is going to be great for the economy. This is going to be great for everyone here. We're going to take care of the people. We're going to do right by everyone. And then when it all said and done, you know, they dump chemicals on top of us. And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Oops. You know, and here's a couple dollars to say I'm sorry, you know, and it was fought against. It was never allowed. It just, you know, there wasn't much that could be done. Mossville was a small town with no representation. It wasn't a city with, you know, a mayor or anyone like that. We didn't have a voice. In fact, we couldn't vote on a lot of the things that happened around us. So that's what happened.
That's how we are. We're in unincorporated Marin, and as it turns out, in the end, we have no representation at all, being Black in this county. I witnessed how this whole affordable housing, that's the issue within Marin County, of building affordable. Affordable is not affordable, as you know, if you're poor. And so I went to some of the meetings where initially where there were white people there, I mean, enraged. And one of our supervisors actually ended her political career because she felt that in certain parts that she had jurisdiction over should have affordable housing. Well, affordable here in Marin County, you're making what, $30,000 a year for a family of four. That's affordable. So, you know, if you're poor, you can't afford it, for poor and Black. So I put that point out there. Then revelation really came to me that it's not about Black, because at this time, Black people are not the workforce for Marin County. The Latino Brown community, they are. And so, but in the meantime, the racism in this county, they don't care if you could clean their houses, you could be their nanny, you could be their cook and their landscaper, but they do not want Black or brown in their neighborhood, and have made it known all throughout this racist Marin County. This is racism at the elite level. And so there are even plans within back in behind the scenes where they know that they have to provide housing for their new workforce, which is the Latino community, because they got plans for where where the majority of the Latino community live within this county. It's called the Canal area, but they've got plans for the canal to turn it into a Vienna or a French Riviera. So that means that their workforce is going to have to go somewhere. So that somewhere is here in Marin City. And so this is why, you know, Black people as a people have outlived their usefulness to the powers that be here in Marin County. So what happens? Well, let us start with the poorest of the poor, the public housing here. We'll do everything. We'll just what you said in terms of, you know, we're going to make it better, you know, and better for who? And like was said at one of the various meetings, is that once you get the developers get started, there's nothing stopping them from building what would be 150 to 1,000. And what would happen to Black people here? You'd be forced out of Marin County. But, you know, I say, no, I don't believe that. And whatever it takes, and I've gone through, you know, some battles with the powers that be, but I have what they call that higher power that's leading and guiding me. So I know that it's not going to happen, because this village is different than anywhere ever that anyone has ever seen. And so, in fact, when they did do the redevelopment, they did the best, they hired the best that they could hire, Frank Lloyd Wright, to design for the poor, the housing that's here. And so it, you know, was an opportunity came to actually be able to put it on the National Historic Register as a National Historic District. And so we are, you know, we're in it to win it, because we have no place to go. We have no place to go. And, you know, there have been some, I'm not just limiting myself to where I live, but in the all Marin City, the greed. So I could see that the greed when they built these so-called condos and were supposed to wait 6 months before they start building. But as soon as they were able to level the ground, they start building. So now the people that live there, their houses are sinking. So, you know, but it's just where you are, but the bottom line is still the same. And I hope that that the fight is not over. I hope not.
Well, that's a good question. So what is the current status right now, you know, of not just, you know, for both the characters in the film and for Mossville in general? Do you guys know story? Well, obviously, Daniel, you must, but where do things stand now?
There are still some families in Mossville, and they're still fighting. They still, one of the ultimate goals is healthcare. You know, an acknowledgement from the refineries to say, yeah, we hold some responsibility and we are going to take care of what we've done. And that's a hard press. That's an uphill battle. And he's resilient. I mean, you witnessed that in the film. Stacey's a very resilient fella. I had an opportunity to sit down with him recently, and his ultimate goal is still to get to Texas. Still really enjoying his time with Andre. He's right here in Lake Charles. You know, he isn't very far from the refineries. We're still fighting though. And the Fishers are still very happy people. They're always very family oriented, but they're still dealing with the same issues. You know, Stacy's health is still deteriorating. He's his feet are swollen, and I've never seen anything like it. Just while I was talking to him, his skin is really brittle, you know, and just while we were talking, we were walking, and he was suddenly like his skin had cracked open, and I was like, it's so odd, you know. But there's just things that I think many of the people in fence line communities face. Like cancer is rampant. I've lost 3 or 4 family members just during the time of filming, you know, due to cancer, you know. And so I think that's really where we stand. We're still fighting. And it's not just a fight for Mossville, at least not for myself. The fight is for every community, not just even the, you know, we focus often on the fence line communities, but it's for everyone. I tell everybody we're all a part of one earth. There's only one atmosphere. We share it, you know.
I mean, we see several water sources, but it's all the same water, you know, and so we need clean air and clean water for not just the fence line communities, not just for Mossville, but for everyone. So I think that's where everybody is right now.
So one of the things that I found really devastating too about the story is that the complete like dismantling of the town. And like, I understand how, you know, they're doing the buyouts of the private property and private homes, but how are corporations like Sassel able to take down public properties like schools? Who authorizes that, and how does that happen? That a whole town can be eviscerated.
So you want to take that one, Alex?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the way that oil and gas can just do whatever they want in Louisiana. They buy people out. They have enough money. They come in and they pay. In Louisiana, we have what's called a police jury, which maybe like is a city council for a parish, which I guess y'all might know as a county. And you know, the police jury here are very much in favor of oil and gas and allow them to do what they want. You know, the only thing that Sassol could not do is take people's homes through eminent domain because they were a foreign company, you know, and private companies are allowed to take people's homes under eminent domain in Louisiana, but it's not a foreign company. So that's why they couldn't just, they wanted to just kick Stacy off his property and take it with eminent domain, but they weren't able to because they're a foreign company. But they are able to buy out everybody and obviously rezone the town. And one of the tactics they do is they make it so hard, such a harsh place to live that people want to leave. You know, the fumes get so bad as the construction begins, the dump trucks are everywhere. I mean, the whole town is kind of covered in dust and you feel like you're in a heavy construction zone. So you are. So they make it so bad that the people who didn't want to leave eventually do want to leave because it's just not the place that they know, and it's not a healthy, happy place to live.
So where are most of the Mossville residents relocating to, and are you guys able to retain any sense of your community? I mean, that's the thing. Obviously, you know, the loss of the town is huge, but just even that sense of community among the members of the community, of how you guys are able to sustain that, or if you are.
Many people have just located across the bridge. And when we say across the bridge, because to us, there's the Calcasieu Bridge, and it's literally a 10-minute drive, still, you know, relatively close to the refineries. And the sense of community, I mean, you just have to be grateful for social media. We have the community groups, you know, Mossville groups, where we all kind of get together and reminisce about what was. But we've lost people to Texas, you know, people are scattered now. And so that sense of community has been decimated, you know, it's just not what it used to be at all. I think that the opportunity that we did have to kind of come home, what people were vying for was something, whether it be a monument or a museum or something. They wanted something in the community. So there's still, you know, attempts for that, but it doesn't really exist. I feel like personally, here's my personal opinion, there was a water tower in the community and it had Mossville on a water tower, and it was painted the school colors, which were, you know, maroon and gold. And Sassol repainted the water tower. To me, it felt like it was really an attack at the community. They painted it Sassol blue, and they put Mossville in Sassol blue. And I thought that was really just a gut shot. And I think a lot of people shared that same feeling. So to not just take the community, but to me, that was an attempt to take that sense of community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, what would you say was the most challenging part of making this film? Like what was, particularly with it, I mean, obviously you were able to, you know, connect with the community and tell their story. As far as the others, you know, dealing with Sassol and even also shooting in South Africa, and you know, just how challenging it was to sort of take on that behemoth in a way, you know, and be able to get access, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredibly physically challenging production. We shot the film, the vast majority of it, before we got any money, any grant funding. So it was, you know, very low budget. It was me, you know, usually grabbing a cinematographer friend from New Orleans and us driving across the state, and we would sleep in our cars. We would sleep in, you know, crappy motels. And it's a very aggressive environment to film in. You know, there's 14 petrochemical plants, and we would try to get as close as we could to the plants to shoot. And, you know, we would be so close, you could feel the heat from the flames coming off of the torches. Obviously, you could be nauseous by the smells that the plants emit, especially at night. You know, the whole town really, like, as soon as the sun sets, all the plants really come alive in a really disturbing way. And we would be filming throughout the night, and, you know, members of our team would get sick. People had nosebleeds, people threw up. And these are really, really toxic chemicals that we were around. And, you know, we were only going there for a little while to film. There's people who are living there. And it also was a very aggressive environment as far as the law enforcement and security, plant security, that were just constantly harassing us. We were not invited to film there. By then, they did everything they could to make filming difficult. We would be filming on the side of the road, and the plant security would roll up on us, and we kind of had this almost like choreographed dance that we would do with them, that it became so repetitive. We could just knew exactly how it was going to go every time. They would pull up and they would say, "You can't film here," and we would say, "We can film here, we're on a public road." And then they would say, "Okay, we'll wait here until the police come." And then we would say, "No, thank you, we're going to leave. You're not a police officer, so you can't detain us." So we would get in our car and leave. And then they would follow us, and they would just follow us through the town. We would, you know, obviously weren't trying to like lose them, like, in, you know, drive fast. We were obeying all the speed limits. So they would just follow us for sometimes, you know, half an hour at a time, until a police officer caught up to us, who they called. And then the police officer would pull us over, make us sit on the curb. You know, sometimes at night, I mean, I remember one night that we were sitting on the curb. The cop got there maybe 1:32 in the morning, and we were sitting on the curb till 3:34 in the morning. The cops would run our licenses, harass us, but they couldn't really do anything to us, you know, because we weren't breaking any laws. So they eventually had to let us go. We also filmed all these interactions. So we have like a whole hard drive of behind the scenes footage of like interactions with police officers. We filmed everything, partially just as like an insurance policy to make sure that they didn't do anything sketchy, because they knew they were on camera. We would sometimes film it live with our phones. So like, even if something happened to us, the footage would be somewhere. And then eventually what they did is they contacted the FBI and told the FBI that we were being suspicious near potential terrorist targets. And so two local FBI agents paid me a visit in New Orleans and detained me and interrogated me, and eventually determined that I wasn't a terrorist and let me go. And the next week it started again. We eventually found out that if we crossed that bridge that Daniel was just talking about, the security wouldn't follow us over the river. For some reason, maybe they're told not to leave that side of the river. So as soon as the security guards would start following us, we would just drive across the river and wait in Lake Charles for a little while and then come back.
Wow.
And then South Africa was also incredibly exhausting. I was shooting a film in Morocco. That's how we got to South Africa. I was working on a film in Morocco, and so we were able to justify the cost because I was already in Africa. And myself and the other cinematographer who was shooting that film with me, we went to South Africa on the tail end of a 30-day shoot in Morocco, filming with sub-Saharan refugees and migrants trying to get into Europe. So that was incredibly exhausted. And then we had 9 days in South Africa where we had to get just so much footage. So we were, you know, up for sunrise, shooting all day into the night, sleeping in our car again. And the plants in South Africa were a whole new level of pollution. And it was just really, really aggressive environment to be shooting in. It was like, looking back on that time, it's almost surreal. Like, we were so sleep deprived, and my co-cinematographer ended up getting really sick. And it was just kind of like a dream looking back on that South Africa trip. And then also, obviously, I should mention the just emotional exhaustion of witnessing so much pain. There's so much pain in that community through our characters. And I think you can't help but absorb that when you're filming with people. And I think that our entire team, you know, we would drive back from Mossville to New Orleans sometimes in just complete silence, almost in shock, because we had just absorbed so much pain. You know, Stacy was going through so much, and at times it felt like we were filming him. We were filming his demise. We felt like we were filming somebody who was dying right in front of us. And even though he wanted us to be there, it was emotionally exhausting. And I think everybody in our team struggled with depression at different times, just from everything that we were absorbing out there.
Did you want to speak, Royce?
No, I was just saying,
I know. Because one of the things that struck me was, you know, we see Stacy basically fending for himself throughout the whole film. Like, you know, other than obviously the time he's spending with his, you know, with his son, you know, even when he's in the hospital, he seems like he's on his own. Does he have a support network? Like, it just, I mean, that obviously the visual image of his property is just so intense. I mean, it just doesn't even look like it's real. It looks like it's out of a, you know, a science fiction movie. But that sense of his isolation, is that how he's basically functioning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a factor of a few different things, few different factors. I mean, one, first and foremost, you know, Stacy is kind of a loner. That's his personality, and that's what enabled him to be able to survive in isolation for so long. But also, he lost so many family members. You know, I mean, he's lost both of his parents. He lost a brother. He's lost uncles, aunts. I mean, he only has one family member really still around. Daniel, would you say? That's Miss Deborah, his aunt. And she, you know, come visit him and his property. But it got to a point where nobody wanted to go in there because it's going into a construction zone. Nobody's allowed to go into his property except for him. I mean, they owned all of the property around him. And what they did is they gave him a servitude to get into his property. So it's a road that only he can go on. It's technically owned by the construction company, owned by Sasol, but Stacy's allowed to go in on it. And they slowly, as you see in the film, they're slowly raising the dirt all around him. They elevated the land. So he was like in a hole. At times it felt like he was in a grave. And people in Mossville didn't want to go in there. People didn't want to drive through that construction site and come in there. I mean, some people didn't even believe that anybody could still be living in there once as it got so bad. So he didn't have a great support network, to be honest. And you know, we as a team struggled with how much we should be that support network for him. We didn't want to do anything to encourage him to stay there longer than he may already stay there. You know, at times there was like talk of us like bringing all of our activist friends from New Orleans and all like occupying Stacy's property and like, you know, having a, you know, just holding it down with Stacy. And we ultimately decided that anything that we did that would encourage him to stay there longer was, first of all, violating the accuracy of the story, because we would be manipulating what was happening, and also we didn't want to take any responsibility for his sickness. The longer he was out there, the sicker he got, and we didn't want to do anything that would encourage him to be out there longer.
Yeah, you mentioned briefly, sorry, we're almost out of time, but you had mentioned briefly before, sort of trying to get some sort of remuneration for healthcare from the companies. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of what is happening with that, is if there's any bit of a, you know, sign of hope around that?
No. Short answer is no. Because what happens is, because there's so many refineries, nobody takes responsibility. So unless there's a major spill, unless there's something that they absolutely cannot deny, you know, then they don't take any responsibility for it. So health issues can be not just, so one plant may be using ethylene dichloride, the next plant may be using, you know, whatever other chemicals it may be, and it may not be, you know, that individual chemical that causes, you know, any health issues, but the mixture of those chemicals that causes the health issues. And there's no way to pinpoint and say, well, this refinery is responsible or another refinery is responsible. And so in essence, nobody takes responsibility for any of it. And then when they do have the major spills, what happens is you have a class action suit. The class action, we all know how a class action works. The attorneys get most of the money, and then the rest is divvied up to, you know, whoever's left. A few people get a substantial amount, and then there's kind of pennies left for everyone else, you know, and usually it's not enough even to, you know, deal with the first medical consultation, let alone pay any real medical bills for usually what is a cancer treatment or something of the sort, you know. And those take years to happen. I can remember, I think it was 2014, they had a spill, and my wife and I actually had to sign up for, you know, the class action suits. We still haven't heard anything back from that class action, you know. And so healthcare wise, there's nobody doing anything, because when you start competing with oil and gas in the southern part of the country, you are asking for it, you know.
So I do, there's a question from an audience member who wanted to ask Daniel what you see as the solution, or as any solutions to create clean air and water for your community. Are there actions that folks can take to support Mossville?
One of the things that I think people can really do is follow the page on Facebook. Google Mossville. That's one of my favorite things to tell people. Google Mossville. Hear these stories. Look at how far this goes back. Google Mossville. Don't just stop at Mossville when great trees fall. Read some of the articles from the past. Look at some of the YouTube videos. But of course, visit the page. Share the links. Make sure that people know about what's happened in Mossville. And I think by making people aware of what happened, we can all make a difference, one at a time. Just word of mouth is our biggest ploy. When you make enough noise about something, you can really get a change. And I think that's true with some of the current events with, what's going on with the situation that happened recently. It was kind of swept under the rug, but people made enough noise, and now something is actually, and there's an investigation in place. So I think the same goes for this. You make enough noise, people have to pay attention. And I think I want, as humble and modest as possible, I'd have to say that this film is making a lot of noise, and I think it's opening the gate for conversation around, hey, what are we going to really do? So I think regardless of how small you think your actions are, whatever it is, do it. But I personally like to veer away from telling people directly, like, do this or do that, because oftentimes as humans, we feel like, well, if we do just what was asked of us, then we've done enough, and then we can kind of cancel out the rest. But if I leave that door open and tell you do what you think is best, it invites you to do more research and invites you to really kind of soul search and decide, like, what efforts am I going to put forth? And I think that's going to be the key. So I think follow at Mossville Project on Facebook, and then, of course, the Instagram. Go to the website, mossvilleproject.com, if I'm right, Alex. And just tell your friends, tell your local people and powers that be. Tell everybody that you can, like, hey, check this out and tell me how you feel. I don't like to preach to the choir. Oftentimes we talk to people who are either going through it already with their own situations, or we talk to people who already kind of have an activist background. I want to tell people who have no idea that this is even happening, people who aren't, necessarily concerned with the environment, because a lot of times you can't really be concerned unless you actually see this happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the beautiful reasons why a narrative approach was the best way to take here instead of talking heads, because you get to witness, like, this is actually happening, and it's shocking. So I think that's the key.
And the film, obviously I would encourage people to watch the film if they haven't. Obviously, if you've already watched it, but if you want to share it with, friends, family, anyone, it's going to be streaming through Rafael at Home, continuing through the week, and we'll stay on, as long as people are watching for a while. So I would just, share the film as widely as you can, let people know about it. Alex, do you have any other, as far as distribution or kind of where the film will go from here, past this, virtual streaming release that it has right now?
Yeah, so the next step for us is we got a national broadcast deal through PBS. So it'll broadcast at the end of May on their Real South channel or show. And so look for it on your local PBS. That'll be the hour-long broadcast version. We're excited to show the film in Geneva to the United Nations coming up. It was supposed to have happened, obviously, with the lockdown, everything changed, so they're rescheduling, but it'll be shown to the Environmental Racism and People of African Descent working group in Geneva. So we're excited for that. And then after our PBS ends its run, it'll go online. It'll be available for streaming on Amazon and all those outlets.
Fantastic. And just to follow up too, we did have a question as to whether or not this discussion will be available online. And yes, we are recording it, and it will be made available online on the Rafael at Home Mossville page after today. So you can.
Question.
Yes, Roy.
Yeah, and that is, how can help come your way? I mean, I know you said health reform, but how can someone really reach out and to make a difference? What do you see is really reaching out to make a difference?
I'd suggest visiting the page, because we've had a lot of discussion about what is the appropriate way to do that. Oftentimes, we kind of target it. We've had people want to target it directly to Stacey, and of course, we wouldn't stifle any any help to Stacy or Mossville or anybody like that. So if you see fit, you know, we just don't know that it was our place to be the conduit to Stacy or to be the conduit to Mossville. What we're suggesting is, you know, sometimes it's best to reach out to your local environmental justice groups to make sure it doesn't happen to that community. Reach out to, you know, your legislators, make enough noise there, because if we can just get a change worldwide, the ultimate goal is clean air and clean water for everybody, because just stopping one community doesn't help us all. You know, and I love my home, and I of course would advocate for whatever we could to make sure that happens for my home. But, you know, I think the ultimate goal is to see the unity that we can see, you know, just with this pandemic situation, we see how unified we really are. How can one person get sick on the other side of the world, and now we're all in our houses every day? So if we see that connectivity through what we're doing here, I think the best thing to do is to do something that, you know, is more centralized to your area, or bigger picture would be to talk to your legislators. But I mean, by all means, if what your heart and soul searching tells you to do is to reach out to Stacy Mossville, there are ways. Just visit the page, reach out to us on Facebook. We can help you, but being a conduit for that was probably not our place at all.
Well, I just want to say that you have given me more courage and more willpower to stand.
Thank you.
Stand, truly.
Well, I want to
Thank you.
thank all of you so much for your time. This was a really great conversation. I just really, you know, thank you for the film. Did you say anything else you want to add, Daniel?
I do, because Stacy passed me the torch with this, and I feel obligated every time I speak to somebody. Stacy told me to remind everyone that people are dying. This isn't just, you know, people are dying. And he passed me the torch and said, it's your turn to take it, run. And that was the one thing he showed me, like a stack of obituaries, and showed people are dying. And I can attest to that as well. I've lost family members, but I think that's the important thing to know, that this isn't about dollars. This isn't about cents. You know, this isn't, it's not minor, that people are dying. Lives have been lost. And I think that's the key. But I did want to just say thank you to you all. And thank you to the people that may not have been mentioned. I missed the gap, but Katie Matthews, the other producers, Catherine Ryerson, Michelle Lanier, Tim, Sean. I mean, there's just a list that could go on forever. And of course, I couldn't name everybody, but Lentoria Newton. There's so many people I just wanted to thank, and I want to thank everybody that watched and everybody that's going to do something in the future too. So there's that.
I just want to piggyback on what he said, because it struck a nerve. Back in the day, I was the youngest person that was involved in Marin City, what was going on here, and the youngest. Now I'm the oldest. And there was one of the elders in our community that fought for it to be a Marin City. And he had said, Royce, there's going to come a time when they're going to want this land, and you better stand up. Otherwise, they'll take it. And that just really resonated in me, that this is my purpose, to stand and to, and to stand boldly for Golden Gate Village. I mean, it's little, but I'm going to take that stand. And we're going to see what it's going to end like. But I believe that it will be victorious. And I think that it will be something that we can just look out for our other people across the country. But this, you really we got to stand. It's not about money. And that's what got us as a people, the money. But you find individuals where it's not about money, it's about principle. And God will lead you all the way through. Thank you.
Thank you all. Such huge appreciation for all of you and for taking the time. It's been really a great conversation. Stay well, be well, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having me.